thank you to Tommy Seegers for having me here. This is one of the second times I've been lucky enough to have an exhibition here at the library. So it's an honor to just be in the presence of this. I will talk a bit about myself as an artist, the things I've done and where I've gotten to at this point, and then I'll leave myself open for questions. As Tommy mentioned earlier, the actual exhibition is upstairs, so when we're finished here, I can have a conversation and guide folks as to the work that's hanging up currently in the library. So I'll start off with talking a little bit about myself. I grew up in Roxbury, Massachusetts. Not going to give you a year or anything like that, too modest. But I've always been interested in art, ever since I was a small child. There used to be a television show that I used to watch faithfully every Saturday morning called Drawing from Nature with Captain Bob Cott. And one time when I was about 5 or 6 years old, when I had the opportunity, and I love to tell this story all these years later, but when I had the opportunity, at the end of every single one of his shows, he would pan across artwork that viewers had sent in. So it was like what Bob Ross did of drawing and painting stuff, but with Captain Bob, he would sketch it out, and then if you did it at home, you mailed it in. And so when I first learned how to write letters, the first letter I mailed out, when I learned where to put the address and everything on the envelopes and all these other things, was to my grandfather in Harrisonburg, Virginia. The next one was to Captain Bob Cottle, and that was the drawing I had done of a horseshoe crab. I think it was a horseshoe crab, it's so long ago. So he actually panned across and showed it. I was about 6 years old. But they hadn't invented the VCR yet, so there was just my word that it actually happened. So I remember being all excited, and his show was on Saturday mornings at like 6:30, wanting to wake my mother up, and I'm like, because once that pan happened, it was over and it was in credits. But I've never forgotten that, and I was just like, I had that up there, I'm gonna be an artist.
Oh, wonderful.
So she always supported that. My aunt Jane as well, because my aunt Jane, when I used to go to her house, she used to give me index cards and papers and things like that to just draw whatever I wanted. So I've always had family members who encouraged me. That's always been a part of it. I ended up later on going to Boston University, and as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I ended up settling, and I hate saying settling, but I ended up becoming a school teacher. That wasn't my first priority, but I was like, I like kids. I had done summer camps, and I had been to summer camps, so let me run with that. And that this is temporary until I do something else. So far, after 30 plus years, I got a couple more to go, and then I'm done. I can go do something else. It's temporary. So that's my attitude about it. But I had a professor in college named Floyd Barber, and another teacher who I took a class with named Tricia Rose. And what they did, particularly Floyd Barber, was encourage me to work on art, but also to think consciously about what it is I'm doing. Now, initially, I had wanted to be a comic book artist and draw superheroes, Batman, the Hulk, Captain America, and all these other things. But once you get to college, you start seeing things differently. I ended up learning about Paul Robeson. I ended up learning about Leontine Price. I ended up learning about all these black people who there was no visual representation, all these other things that were going on with their lives, and it just made me less and less interested in breaking into comic books and superheroes. Beyond that, there's always someone who's going to draw Spider-Man, the Hulk, Wolverine, or whatever. There's always going to be someone for that. But how often is someone going to do Paul Robeson? The man was like a shooting star in terms of Shakespeare in several different languages, opera singer, a great actor, a professional football player, and a lawyer, and an activist. So many things. That's a superhero who's a real life person. And that got me more interested in that. In addition to that, years ago I went to a summer camp, and I love to talk about this as an example for some time, called Anytown. And it was a camp by the National Conference of Christians and Jews that got diverse people together for about a week to really talk and do activities that dealt with racism, sexism, and homophobia. My God, we need stuff like that now, considering what's going on in the world. And that's going to be something we can talk about later on. But at the time, me growing up a kid in the 80s, it had so much impact on me in terms of understanding diversity, inclusiveness, but also understanding where other people come from and their realities and their experiences and not being dismissive of it. So it was a major influence on me as an artist to want to be someone who does the things that I do. So as a school teacher, I ended up, I taught for a couple of years in Florida. Then I taught in Boston. Then I ended up still in Boston, but I teach out in Sudbury, which I've been the last 25 years, and I enjoy it. I love my students. Some of the best support for what I do creatively came from actually the librarians at Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School, and I love them to death. If I need periodicals, because my work is so political in content, or if I need articles from Boston Globe newspapers or Newsweek and Time and all these other things, because I'm the only one who goes to the library and actually reads the stuff there. Most of the kids are on their laptops. They always prep and give me information. If they see things that are relevant or that I'd be interested in, the librarians at Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School are always there for me. So they're a major impact on some of the things I do. One of the things I'm most known for is what you see behind me, which is the scrolls of justice, basically. And I'll click it right there. When George Bush, the second Bush, decided he was going to do an invasion of Iraq and then the war in Afghanistan after 9/11 happened, I had some really conservative students on campus who were very, you gotta support America or there's something wrong with you. You better support America or else you're a traitor. This is during the period of freedom fries, if folks can remember that. So I had a student come up and confront me one time, and I don't proselytize at my job. It's very important not to do that because you can get fired. If I was a pro-Trump person and decided to tell you what I thought, you know what I mean? It's going to lead to stuff. So I don't proselytize. But I had a student confront me and tell me, "What are you pro-Saddam? You know, are you like America or are you pro-Saddam? What are you into?" I said, "I'll tell you what. I'll take some notes and I'll get back to you." So I started this project on these scrolls that I had, because when I went to Boston University, they would make you buy a whole bunch of supplies and stuff, and half the time you never even needed it. But I had these rolls of paper. So I said, let me write this down and I'll just illustrate and write my thoughts on things. I had no idea it was going to be the longest war in American history. And I said, well, I guess I got to keep going until it's finished. So I think Joe Biden pulled us out. But to be honest with you, I couldn't stop because Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. And what has happened to our country, I'm like, you need to keep writing this down. So I've worked on it for several years throughout the war, political things. What you see behind you right now is during the period when this guy with a foreign-sounding terrorist name, Barack Obama, was running for president, and we heard the words hope and change. Now, I was lucky and blessed enough to have help with piecing this video together by Lee Weinstein, who's sitting here in the front. Lee has been there with me every step of the way. This was my thesis project when I was in graduate school. So he found a way, and this is something you should talk to him about when I'm done with this talk, because Lee's like a genius. And I'm not going to do him justice by explaining his process. But for the most part, taking several photos of parts of the scrolls and stitching it so you just see it as though it's rolling across. All right, so that's what this is. It was a hit at graduate school, and when I had to do my thesis defense, and again, this was just a year, so this was 2012 when I had the thesis defense. I remember my professors were just like, when are you going to get into the Smithsonian? That's all we care about, getting it in the Smithsonian. We could care less about the paper you wrote or anything. It needs to be in the Smithsonian as a historical document. And I was looking at them like, I don't know how to do that, that's not easy. But I also said to them, I'm not finished yet. There's too much. Now, someone asked me one time, well, how do you keep it in your house? Well, I'm like, this is what you're seeing that's rolled up. That's not what you're seeing, that's I've yet to get to. Now, one of my closest friends, Joseph Jones, put pushed me, not even just him, but my mom pushed me that if we can carry this and transport it to different locations, we can get people that you've drawn on it to sign it. And of course my mom was like, oh, you can make some money off that. You can make some money off that. So, 2 governors have signed it. All right, Deval Patrick and, oh my God, I don't want to hurt his feelings. Charlie Baker. I was about to get nervous. I was like, Charlie Baker. I managed to have William Shatner, Captain Kirk, Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock, Nichelle Nichols, Lieutenant Uhura, all signed it. Oh yeah, you'll trust me. I'm like, yeah, it's getting better. It's getting better. The $6 Million Man, Lee Majors, the Bionic Woman. I got her to sign it, and again, picking it up, rolling it up, carefully wrapping it, bringing it. The actor that played Kunta Kinte when he was older, but he also played James on Good Times, John Amos. We talked for about an hour about this because he was so impressed. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful conversation. He was like, are you in the military? Did you do something? I said, no. I'm just someone who writes and draws and illustrates things about stuff I admire and people who've given me inspiration and ideas. And so that was a really wonderful conversation that I had with him. And that was about an hour. And I'm like, this is James from Good Times, and he played Kunta Kinte in Rhodes. This is great. So, what I've done is I've continued it. So when you see this and all the way to the end, that's just 12 years ago, or since 2012. We 2024. I have a strange sense that if we get a situation where I have to continue the videos and stuff like that, people are going to be traumatized by some of the things I write about. Because like I said, Donald Trump is the gift that keeps on giving. You know, with his little fascist behind. You just can't help but go, oh my God. This, he said this. Also, before I forget, and for those of you who don't know, if you do, that's fine. Coming up right now, I also managed to meet, out of respect to my grandfather, his image is coming up right now, former WWF wrestling champ, or WWF wrestling champ, Bruno Sammartino, who was a huge star in the 60s. So there's his autograph right there, and I'm like, it's Bruno! My grandfather used to talk about him all the time, and I had an opportunity to meet him. Let me get him to sign it, and I'll draw him on there someplace too. So, part of the reason that something so political, like next to it is Eartha Kitt. Why something so political relates to something with pop cultural stuff is, number one, I've always been a fan of Andy Warhol's and the pop culture movement that Andy Warhol did. But I've always been a political person as well, and I've always tried to find ways to meld the two together and stuff in terms of my reality and my experiences as a black man in America, but also as someone who gets influenced by pop cultural icons and images and symbols and things like that. So if something triggers certain memories for me, I'm like, well, I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to continue the narrative about what's going on in America, but I got an opportunity to meet this person. I got an opportunity to meet that. Trust me. Last year I ended up meeting Henry Winkler, who played the Fonz on Happy Days. Just saying it got my face lit up, and I'm like, it's the Fonz! You know, so it's stuff like that I'm like, oh, I got to continue doing that and having these engagements. But as you see things pass by, like you see Rush Limbaugh and Alan Culture and some of the things that they do or that they had said in the past, get it all down. How much of it is negative influences, how much of it is positive influences, and how much of it is the reality of what's going on in the world. So that's what this is, and obviously I'll be glad to answer questions about that later. Now, the exhibit upstairs is my constitutional series. There have been so many challenges to the Constitution. I've been studying and reading the Constitution for years and years and years, that I ended up taking copies of it, because if you go to downtown Boston, Faneuil Hall, there is a whole bunch of, am I doing it right? Just make sure I'm not, but everyone can hear me? I always get nervous if I'm too far away. There is a whole bunch of these constitutions that they sell at Faneuil Hall. No one ever buys them. Maybe people do from out of state and stuff like that, but there's always stacks of them that they're selling. So I usually buy them and I'll cut into them after I've reread them and looked at certain sections, 14th Amendment, this amendment, all these other things, and I put stuff into it, and I start to think, I teach high school kids, and unfortunately sometimes if you have certain conversations, you realize how little that some of them know because they don't see it as mattering and it doesn't mean anything and things like that. So I, as a teacher and as an educator, but as someone who doesn't want to proselytize, some of the things in the back of my mind is, how do I get kids to want to see how much something from the past relates to us now? So one of the pieces upstairs you'll see is a drawing I did of Roger Taney. And beneath him are several images of black people who've been killed unarmed by law enforcement, and there was no repercussions and no charges that were brought upon them. And for someone who looks at it, they may go, well, who's the white guy? You know, who is he? And who is all this? And then it helps open the dialogue about Roger Taney saying during the Dred Scott decision that there's no laws for the Negro that the white man is bound to respect, and how legally that has translated to what goes on to this day. So I'm always trying to go back and forth and back and forth. So when you see some of the other pieces upstairs, again, I'm always thinking, how do kids or how do people in general go, that's in the past, that's old, that's a long time ago, slavery a long time ago. It can't be a long time ago because history is fluid. So it's not a long time ago. You know, I knew my grandmother, I loved her dearly. I knew my grandfather and I loved him dearly. But I knew their grandparents were slaves. It's not, I'm 54, 53, so it's not like bam, bam, bam. It's too long to remember. But why should the memories be wiped away because it was a certain amount of time ago? You know, Harriet Tubman died in the 20th century, for God's sake. So, I'm probably one of the only artists you'll know who can do a drawing of Frederick Douglass right next to an illustration of the banana splits, and it makes sense. That someone could go, what the hell, how? What's he saying? How's he doing this? But it does to me, because there are so many stories, but I'm also a three-dimensional rounded person, so it's not going to be, you know, where everything is the way it is. Or you're black, so it must be this way, or it must be that way. There's too much to every single one of us as individuals to be limited. So as I'm doing these things, collages, projects, and stuff like that, my dedication as an artist and as a person, and I gotta definitely preface that as an artist, a black man, an individual, a human being, an American, all those things piled up. There are so many aspects that I love to explore them all. So when it's reflected in my work from what you're seeing here and what you'll see when we go upstairs, it is who I am. And so that's one of the things that it's very important for me to let people know. It is who I am. You know, some of it, people get confused. I've had some people in the past say to me, how come you don't do anything positive? It doesn't seem positive. Why aren't you doing positive stuff? And I said, because it's not about positive or negative. It's reflecting who I am and what I'm seeing. You know, they often quote the great James Baldwin when he said to be black and relatively conscious in America is to be in a constant state of rage. I'm not in a constant state of rage, I don't think, but if I'm feeling certain ways, I want to reflect it in my art, my drawings, my collages, and what have you. And I'm unapologetic about it. Everyone should be. You know, if people are women, LGBTQ, other people of color, things like that, you have every right to reflect your vision of what you're seeing going on in the world and how you feel about it. No one should ever back down from that. So as you're seeing these things move by, again, constant notes, and this was all from the year of 2008 to 2009 when Obama ran for president. And I had a bad feeling, and I'm not saying this to lie to anyone in this room or to exaggerate, but I had a bad feeling that when he was going to leave office, we were going to end up with someone like Trump. I felt the backlash early on, and I'm not saying that, like I said, if people don't believe me, by all means go to YouTube and slow the video down and look at some of the things I wrote about, because I was like, there's going to be a backlash like it's no one's business, and we've been living through it. We have been living through it. So these are some of the things, or these are the things that I've been working on. Oh, behind me right now, the great Dalai Lama. He was in, he came to Boston at one point, and I brought it, and they didn't allow photos to be taken of him there, but I couldn't get close enough to him to get him to sign it. But I drew him when I went to the temple that he was at. I think it was in Medford. And so I was like, oh my God, an opportunity to see the Dalai Lama, let me get him to sign it. And it didn't happen. But I remember it, and I was just like, oh man, what an opportunity. So a lot of the people that make history, a lot of the people that are known, and a lot of times I'll deep dive back into aspects of history. For instance, what you're seeing now, G. Gordon Liddy and a lot of the people who were arrested during the Nixon thing. And this was my reflections of, if they did that then, can they do it now? And would it be worse, or would they get away with it now? So these are a lot of the people who ended up getting busted during the Nixon campaign, during the Watergate situation. And of course you see J. Edgar Hoover, and some of these people, it's like, we have all these institutions, but if people want to bend them and go certain ways, what does that mean for us who are regular American citizens, that people can do that? So when I hear, former President Trump say, we need to do something to the Department of Justice, and we need to fix it so that the judges and the lawyers do this and this, there's only 2 or 3 steps towards fascism. And so these are some of the things I talk about. And as you just saw, I had Marian Anderson there, but I had her next to one of the greatest singers of all time. And these are some of the other ones here. And again, reflections on Gitmo Bay, how we treat our prisoners, how we treat human beings, and what it means to be an American, but what it means to show humanity and compassion towards other people. So these are the things that I reflect on in all of my work, and when we go upstairs, I'll be glad to talk with folks about that. I'm very lucky and blessed that I have the willingness to do the deep dive into some of this stuff. And sometimes I'm embarrassed because my living room almost looks like an episode of Hoarders, because I have so many articles and so many things I'm reading and references. But it's worth the journey and the experience for what I learned and what I'm willing to share as an artist and as a person. So these are the things that I've been doing. These are the things upstairs. I'm in an exhibition. I'm going to be on the artist panel Thursday next week, as Tommy mentioned, over at the Museum of Fine Arts, and I'm on a panel with some of the most talented artists I could ever be blessed to be in the same room with. Starting with Paul Goodnight, former student of mine, James Perry, is on the panel, Lamergy Frazier, there's a number of people, so I'm very honored to be a part of that. And on that note, if folks have questions and things like that, I'll be glad to talk and continue the conversation right now. Absolutely.
My name is Marsha, and I noticed as the scroll was moving, you captioned aliens. There was like an alien script on the bottom. I'm just wondering because it seems so out of place. This was way back.
Yep. I would have to look at it again, but if you look at a lot of what I do, if I were going to explain it, some of it is political, what I'm learning here and now, and a lot of times it's also stream of consciousness, what I'm seeing. So when I added those, the little green ones in the strips there, right? Number one, that was me saying, when I was in graduate school, they make you get with a mentor, and the mentor looks at what you've been doing, and then they tell you, you got to try something different and all this other stuff. So when I started graduate school, they were like, there's no point in you trying anything different. It's your thesis project. But I had a mentor, there it is right there. But I had a mentor, right? Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
Yes. Let's take a look. But I had a mentor who was like, do some comic strips in there and try some other things. And then, I said, okay, try watercolor, but that might pop a hole in it, so be careful with that. Try different media, try a different way. So comic strip was the thing. So it becomes part of my vocabulary by So it was mainly about fascism and things that people get away with that's mainstream. Because at the time, there was a guy who said something, a politician who said something about how sexual assault is just is a natural man thing to do. It just is. We just men, that's what we do. If you're wearing a tight skirt, that's on you, but we men. And it was me doing something about it because Rush Limbaugh was one of the main ones who tried to echo that. He referred to women as feminazis. See, shaking your head, but once we look back on it, we go, oh yeah, that's right, that AO did do that, yeah. And so, sometimes when I detour, I have to stop and just write it down and things, because I can't do it every hour on the hour, every minute on the hour, you know what I mean? So sometimes when I stop, I say, well, what can I do that's visually compelling for me to remember this moment? And that's what that was. So there's always those differences, and everything that I've ever done on this has a purpose for the moment that I've done it. And so I can laugh about certain things, like one of the things that always made me mad about Obama was when he made certain decisions that got me upset. What I would do is draw him with his back towards me. Because I'm like, I can't believe you did us like that. If you look at this image of Obama here, there's yellowish imagery going through his face. That happened because when I was drawing him, I spilled my beer on it. The paper made a mistake. Nothing political about it whatsoever.
That's the one I nicknamed Barack Obama.
Yeah, that's what we got. But yeah, I spilled my beer on the paper. But when you see Ray Charles and you see Odetta, that was my wish that those folks had sung at his inauguration as well. I loved Aretha Franklin. I put Marian Anderson next to her earlier when you saw that. One of my favorite things about this is, since my son was a little kid, I would have him draw on the scrolls. And I made him put his age on there. Never became an artist like me, but always was willing to do stuff. There's a famous statue by John Wilson called Eternal Presence in Roxbury. Every year since my son was born, on his birthday until he turned 18, I always brought him there to take a photo of him next to it, because it always had such symbolic meaning to me. When he turned 18, one of the filmmaker custodians at the high school I teach at, Bruce Millett, who's a great photographer, was like, I want to be the one to take the shot. I want to be the one. So we ended up taking photos of my son next to it. And at the time, he didn't understand the significance, but now at 24, he does. We had a conversation about that a month ago, and he's like, wow, yeah, you really, I remember that, Dad. You really did that. I said, yeah, of course. So I live in Jamaica Plain, not that far from the MSPCA, but also not that far from the Veterans Hospital. And they let me go in there at one point to just draw prosthetics. When I found out that IEDs, improvisational explosive devices, were like so commonplace that so many American troops were losing arms, legs, limbs, I said, can I at least come in and just draw those? I'm not gonna try to draw the troops. I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, because some people may not want you sketching them when they're in the condition they're in. So they were like, oh yeah, sure, come in. So I started drawing a bunch of those, and they were on there as well. Right here you see Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world. I deep dived into him in his after I saw the documentary Unforgivable Blackness. And when I did, there were so many similar correlations between what Obama was going through as the first black president that I was like, holy cow. Jack Johnson's a significant part of this. So it is what it is. When you see these boxes like this, with the banana splits and all these, I drew these ropes that go in there. Outside, you can't see it now, but it's finished. But the ropes that I drew are extensions. Way down, you see my face. I drew a self-portrait of my face, and these ropes go into my face. And it's a reflection for me of things I liked as a kid, things I observed as a kid, things that probably had some sort of impact on me as a kid. And then I continue those same ropes and extensions off my face onto my son's, and I did a portrait of him. And saying, these are some of the values I hope he gets. Like, I'm not dying dead for my son to know about the banana splits. I'll make him annoyed by talking about them or certain things, but I'm not trying to do that. And then the things that scare me, that's reflected in his hair, he has a giant afro, that I'm afraid could mess him up, especially when it comes to social media, pornography, some of these other things that were way out of our experiences growing up. So those were some of the things. Now here you see some of the prosthetics that I was telling you about. So that's why the pieces that are shaped like boxes, they later go on and they reflect. These are the things that I grew up seeing. These are the things I learned, but this is what I'm hoping and imposing that I hope my son learns. So at some point when I laid it out, because he helped me and Lee with putting this together, at one point, he and I had a conversation, and I told him recently, I said, we had to have a conversation now, since then, because it's been some years, he's almost 24. So that's what that's where that comes from. So every single thing you see on these have a certain meaning or a certain reflection. Yes?
So is there a point in your script here in the scroll that when your political history is continuing and you're educated more and more about some of the history of the past, that you will have to insert something further back in your scroll?
I won't go back.
You don't go back?
If I do, it compromises it. The only time I have gone back is to finish certain drawings. But I won't go back and rewrite and go, I changed my mind, that was wrong. Nah, if that's what I felt and that's what I believed back then, it's gotta stay.
And will you please keep doing this with the turmoil and the distress that our country's in now? Are you still in the process of recording this?
I have a feeling, and I don't want to say stuff to scare people and make people uncomfortable, but based on my experience and my observations, we're descending dangerously close to turning into a fascist nation. And I want to be there to write it, but I also feel like I owe it to people like Paul Robeson. I owe it to people, James Baldwin, so many others. And I'm not sitting up here even remotely saying I'm as talented or as good as they are as writers. But I feel an obligation that they reflected the times they lived in when America was extremely unfair to black folks. And I want to reflect this. They just had that ruling in Texas where that kid, they suspended indefinitely because of his hair. It's shocking, but any way to criminalize us, there's going to be an attempt. There's going to be an attempt. So let's look at the backstory of it. Let's look at the reflection of why and how and all these other things. But it's almost like it's a tradition in this America. It's a proud tradition. Destroying black bodies, incarcerating black bodies, imprisoning black bodies. I want to reflect it in my work. And some of the things you'll see upstairs is reflective. Because at the end of the day, what has really changed? So in answer to what you're saying, yeah, it takes a lot. And there were times with Donald Trump when he was president where I felt like my arm was going to come off. There were just times. I just was like, if I started to write down every lie or misstatement, it's going to lead me to the kind of depression that's going to make me go, let me start rewatching video footage of Evel Knievel when he jumped the Snake River Canyon or something. I got to get out of this mentally.
It makes me think of a book my granddaughter, when she's 17, she was probably around 11 or 12, she wrote about Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote about the wisdom and his accomplishments, and it's a blank book. Now I've got a picture of it, totally blank book.
That's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put that in a display next to his gold-plated sneakers he's selling. But yeah, that's about right. Are there any other questions? I'm glad to answer them. Whoa, I got one, two. Okay.
I have a quick question. When you said you went and drew the prosthetics, now do you go in with a notebook and then you paste it into your scroll?
I never paste it because that's
So you take
natural
the whole
paper.
scroll with you?
Yeah.
My heavens, that's kind of bulky.
Joseph Jones has helped me with that. All right, he's one of my closest friends from college. He's my son's godfather. He's helped me when I brought it to comic book conventions or when I brought it before Governor Deval Patrick and different people.
How big is it? What, like this?
Yeah.
It's about this big. And
Wow.
It weighs about 30 pounds.
Wow.
And you have more? How
I got more that I've yet to get to than I have that I've yet to do.
But I mean, in the scroll, how big is this scroll?
About 11 and a half, 12 inches.
In total, without your impressions, I'm saying like, or do you?
It's thousands of feet long.
Wow.
But it's that, the one that Lee and I have done with this here, that's one. Before that, I did 7 others
Oh, I
that are
see.
60
Okay.
feet in length.
Oh.
This latest one that I started around 2007, that's the one that weighs 30 pounds, and I've just run with that one, and I'm like, I'll just stay on this one.
Wow.
But the other ones were the ones from college that there was just 70 feet, 70 feet, 70
Wow.
feet, 70 feet. And then I was like, oh, wow, I'm out of paper. And then one of the artists in the AMAR program that I'm in was like, I got a hold of some paper. It might help you with what you're doing. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And he was like, yeah, $30. So I was like, okay, this is an investment I'm willing to put in now.
Right.
Because it was so heavy that I'm like, okay, I'll just run with this. And certain parts in the back have torn. And I've had to tape the back.
Okay.
And I've had people say, well, how come you don't just cut it? I said, it's going to ruin my train of thought.
Right.
I don't want to cut it and try to reorganize where everything was. It's
Yeah.
going to ruin my train of thought. So that's why it is what it is.
You
Yes.
Go back to, I know you said you didn't go back to rewrite, but before you, if you have something, a mental image and a mental thought about something that's current, you ever roll it back to see if it, like a political figure or an act or something, and say, really, say, you know, so many years ago, this is relevant, or
The last time I actually rolled it back, I love telling this story. I've never told it before, but I'm laughing telling it to you. The last time I rolled it back was about 1.5 years ago. Oh, that's my face right there before I forget. And so you see those things coming out of the box around my face. Those are the ones that go towards all the stuff you saw earlier. And then they also lead to all the stuff in terms of my anxiety and my thoughts about what my son is going to go through at 9 years old. So that's where it is. Of course, huge Prince fan,
Right.
Michael Jackson, Madonna. I'm like, yo, I grew up in the 80s. But in answer to what you were saying in terms of going back,
just to read it, just a reference, if you're about to do something and think about, you know, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago,
I
let's see
went
what it
back.
says.
The last time I unrolled it and went back, further back, I had an opportunity in Framingham to meet at a comic book convention. They usually, people say comic book convention, they forget that if you go to those, there's like people who are big Hollywood movie stars or pro wrestlers and stuff like that. I had an opportunity to meet former WWF champion Bob Backlund. All right, one of the second longest serving pro wrestling champs of all time. So I rolled it all the way back to that part where I had drawn him, and I brought it to him and he signed it. And I had a chance to meet Mr. USA himself, Tony Atlas, one of the first black heavyweight wrestling tag team champions or what have you. And again, that just made me go, oh my God, I remember this. Let me go back and get it. Because like I said to you all earlier, my mother was like, you can make some money if you can get some of these people to sign it. I'm like, you know, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, this one and that one. So I said, let me get these people to sign it and just take it from there. And like I said, the most wonderful conversation I had was with John Amos, James from Good Times, Kunta Kinte from Roots. And we had a wonderful conversation about it. So, you know, for me, I was like, yeah, it's definitely an original work of art because you're not going to see many people do that. But what I've also said in the past was, I saw an episode of The Love Boat years ago, all right? Used to love the show. Andy Warhol was on the episode, doing something. He was doing photography and something. I can't remember, it was so long ago. A couple of years later, he was at WrestleMania 4. And I was like, I want to be an artist like that. I love the pop cultural thing, and I'm not going to let it go. And so that's why there's so many of those kinds of references in addition to the political. Because I was like, well, I want to be an artist like that. I like a lot of pop cultural stuff. No matter how corny or goofy or people go, really? Wrestling? Comic books? Really? I'm like, that's my thing. You know, that is my thing.
When you went to art school, did they try and dissuade you from, did they have a line, this is illustration, this is fine art, you're
When I was in graduate school, they didn't do that at all.
No.
No, there's too many people who do stuff not like this, but do stuff similar veined. The main thing when I was in graduate school, I mean, I didn't start this when I was at BU, when I was an undergrad. I was doing this years later. But when I was in graduate school, when they saw it, the first thing when I had my first group meetings and stuff was they were like, this is your thesis. Even though I had another year and a half to go, they were like, that's your thesis. I'm like, really? They were like, that's your thesis. Yeah, so there's my autograph from Leonard Nimoy, Mr. Spock. He went to my high school class of 1948 English High. So when I met him, I was like, I don't care about the ears or the Vulcans or nothing. You family, you went to English High. What's up?
Whoa.
So I was a huge fan of his. Oh, way beyond that. I mean, he just is. So my attitude has always been celebrate the cultural stuff in addition to the political that I'm deep diving in, and sometimes celebrating the cultural stuff that I grew up on and things I've observed. It helps me deal with the trauma of the political that's going on. It just does. Yes.
Springboarding on that, what are your thoughts on the pop culture elements of Luke Cage, the first black superhero in a black hoodie, or Black Lightning?
Well, with Luke Cage, I'm glad that, what's his name? Either it was John Romita who first illustrated him. Dave could probably help me with that. But the first illustrator, years later, apologized for having him chained around his head, his waist, and his hands. He apologized. He said that was a horrible aesthetic design, that you get this black superhero with super strength and we chain him. So there was an apology for that, which I was glad for. Couldn't stand the writer when I was a kid who would have him saying, "Sweet Christmas." I was like, I don't know anyone black that says that. That don't even sound right. When it comes to superheroes, Black Lightning, Black Vulcan from the Super Friends, and several of them, I get really tired of black people having powers of electricity. We've done more with electricity than Thomas Edison ever could, and it's just annoying that that's our power. When it comes to stuff that I've seen, Black Panther, the film, was something I had pretty much been waiting my entire life to see. And so, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, as you well know, you grow up in the 70s and 80s, you get the Hulk TV series, $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, the god-awful Spider-Man series that lasted barely a season, or some of these other things. So when they started cranking out these movies, and they spent money at it, it was amazing. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would see what I saw when Black Panther came out. So I hope that things will get better, although I'm not too sure, because it was that backlash against the 3 women that were in the Marvels or whatever, and they were hate bombing that film before anything. But when I saw it, I was like, oh, I thought it was entertaining. But people hate bombed it to the point where it just didn't make any money. They were like, this is what happens when you have woke and diversity. No one's gonna go see it. And I'm like, I saw it and I liked it. I thought it was entertaining. Come on now, it's not Shakespeare, but come on. You know, that's how I feel about those. Yes.
I had a question. I apologize for coming in late. You may have addressed this before I came.
No apology necessary. I'm just glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm here too. This is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, your work is fantastic, and you know, I'd love to be able to stop and read that. Have you filmed all of your scrolls? And if you did, you know, I was just thinking when you talk about it being at the Smithsonian, it might be, you know, better to have like the films projected constantly rather than the physical material, or maybe both, because this is just wonderful.
This was filmed with Lee Weinstein here, one of my closest friends.
Thank you, sir.
And like I said, ask him how, because I don't want to speak wrong of how he did it. But this was my thesis project. Now, before me and Lee did this in 2012, I started this 2003.
Right.
And it's now 2024.
It would be just wonderful. I mean, I could just see this a room.
I'm going to have to write him a big check because he's going to be with me like for about 3 weeks straight if we did the entire thing.
Right.
Yes.
Well, you know.
We'll do it.
We'll do it.
We will.
But it's going to take a minute if we do the entire thing in what it is. And the irony is, when we get to the end, I'm still not done.
Well, no, of course not.
Yeah, there's too much extra paper that I'm still not done.
This whole thing is online on YouTube.
Oh, it is.
Shay can give
This is
you.
a YouTube video.
Okay.
Shea can give you the URL to it. It takes about an hour to watch the whole thing.
Okay,
And
good.
there's
You
a
can
segment,
pause it.
there's a segment at the end that shows how we took the photos, and it doesn't show all the computer stuff that I did with.
Fantastic, thank you.
Absolutely.
Now, is it your intention at some point to write a book so that we can read all of your thoughts and, I mean, because this is like a political brochure, you know what I mean?
Yes. I've self-published books.
Okay.
Self-published books, but for something like this, the right company, the right situation, the right scenario, and I understand some of the things that I reflect on when it comes to this is how easy it would be for someone to just give me $100,000 for this and then just use it and exploit it and
Right.
maybe even write other things on it and do whatever to it.
Yeah,
So I'm very extremely protective about
yeah,
it.
no, I understand that.
You know, I got a special room in my house upstairs where I keep it, and I have 2 kittens, and I make sure that that door is shut because no one's crawling on it or making mistakes with it. What I'm going to do, that's something that I have to have with a consultation with attorneys and where I'm going to go with it, because I have no trust and no faith that something that, for the most part, is original in a lot of ways,
Right,
won't be exploited or won't be some sort of pathetic cash grab, and they go, we got our money off,
That's
we
right.
gave you your money, now we're going to do what we want.
right, right.
Have you did you copyright on this?
No.
Copyrights are automatic the moment you create something.
That's what you told me.
Registering it as a copyrighted material is different. You can only register the part that you've finished, but he won't lose the copyright. You don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
I wrote a letter to the government years ago with the thing for copyright laws or something like that, describing it. Because someone had told me if you do that and it gets sent to them, it counts. And that was about 9 or 10 years ago. Yes.
When you have the other bowls, do you do anything special to store them besides keep them in a locked room?
I got plastic bins I got from Target, and I seal them in them. I cover it up, seal it. The other ones, I won't go back and go, you know what, I changed my mind. I don't like what I was thinking 20 years, 16 years, 18 years. I want to change it. Seal it. Because once you go back, then you're lying to yourself and you're lying to the people that are going to see it. And I'm obsessive about fact checking too. Because that's my first thought is
Right.
someone will look and go, that didn't happen, you
That's
lying.
right.
So I'm like, oh no, I fact check. There's too much crap in my living room for me to be lying about this, because that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's fact checking. Yes.
This is kind of related, but I'm working on archiving a history of an organization.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that might be some way to do this for you, archive it. Talk to BU or like the Howard Thurman, right? That's new. And that would be a way of preserving it in the format that you want. Certainly, I mean, you know, it's pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Because we worked on our project for 2.5 years, and, you know, we finally got to the point where we're beginning to get digital copies and things like that. But that might be a way, you know, in addition to the copyright,
Yeah.
for you to do that. This is wonderful. I would love to read it. My background is psychology.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I would just love to read it.
It's always on YouTube. You can hit pause. I fixed it so that no one can comment.
Okay.
And part of the reason I fixed it, I want that is, everybody's entitled to their opinions,
Right.
right? Everybody's entitled to say, I'm offended, I don't like it, that's too woke, that's too this, and this. But how often is there an opportunity for myself as an individual, but as a black man in America, to be able to say something unfiltered,
That's right.
not real quick, reduced to a soundbite that gets trashed on Fox News, but say what I got to say. And you can either listen to it or you don't. But I've still said it. Now, if you got a problem with what I've said, reread everything else, go back over it. But I'm not obligated to have a hard conversation. We can go back and forth and argue and all this other stuff, because that's one of the main things. One of the people that inspired me to take this kind of mentality, there was a 60s cartoonist named Robert Crumb. If you've ever seen the documentary Crumb, eccentric guy, his brothers were crazy, whatever, because of their parents, whatever. Some of the most sexist, racist, misogynistic cartoons, illustrations, things he did. Having sex with women and shoving their heads in toilets and illustrating them being distorted and twisted and all these other things, and he was unfiltered. And when scholars and people reflect on his work, he's like, hey, I'm just writing what I think and how I feel, or what I thought and what I was feeling, what I was observing during that time period. I'm like, I'm going to do that. Not with the face in the toilet and all that, but I'm going to say what it means to be a black man in America, and I'm not going to bend. And if you start getting into, well, I gotta think about the other person's opinions, the other person's feelings, or how the other person looks at things, then it starts to become compromised. And unfortunately, as a black man in America, it doesn't take a lot to put you in a position of being compromised. Oh, you're too militant. You're too angry. You too this. You sound like you hate white people. And all these wonderful caveats that a lot of us have to deal with. So I'm not gonna go through that. I'm just not. It's there, it's unfiltered, and if you don't like it, then don't look at it. You're not obligated to.
Right.
You know. Yes.
2 comments and a question. So, yeah, it's funny with the comic books that we grew up with, how things are sort of changing. So Luke Cage is now the mayor of New York.
In the comics?
Yeah, in the comics.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of interesting. And what she said, you know, I wonder actually whether you could at some point get a room at Mass Mocha, because there's so much space there. It would really be a cool place. I could see it. So my question is, what are some of your current pop culture influences? And are they working their way in?
To be honest with you, I look to the past. I'm not a big fan of pop culture right now. I look to the past. I grew up on hip hop and loved it when I was a teenager. Can't stand it now. Too much liberal usage of the N-word, but also the whole 80s shtick of I'm a gangster, I'm a hood, I'm a this, and this, and oh, I'm a female, I'm a stripper, I'm a this, and this. It doesn't entice me to be interested in it. So I lost interest in that. Pop cultural influences. My students got me into shows like The Office, if that even counts. But it's not an influence, it's just something I'm entertained by. Abbott Elementary, I can relate to as a school teacher, you know, I like that. But usually now, I look to the past and things I saw in the past, and I don't know if that makes me, and I can say this on camera, but I don't know if that makes me 2 steps off being an old man. But I like things better from the past than I do of what's currently going on. Because I think a lot of what has happened with pop culture, and if we had some teenagers here, they might disagree with me. But I think what a lot of has happened lately with pop culture is it's been dumbing down kids to a certain extent. They don't have to struggle to learn like we did. Do they even remember card catalogs? When you go to the library and you had to do the research and all that, I just Google it and I can find it out. So there's no struggle for the information. And that makes me less inclined. Like the high school that I teach at, when I go to the library, I'm the only one there who reads and checks out books. I'm like the only one. And kids are surprised by it. They're like, why are you here? I'm like, I'm here to check out books and read. And they're like, really? It's almost like they didn't even realize there were books in the library. So it makes me go, you know, I can have kids say, well, I don't know. I said, what are the 3 branches of government? Just casually conversation. I don't know. I said, you need to look up Schoolhouse Rock. They go, what's that? And I'm like, see, this is why I can't stand your generation. You don't know what Schoolhouse Rock was. I'm like, that alone could teach you some stuff if you watched a few episodes. But like I said, it's a hop, skip, and a jump from being a teacher to just being an old man that's ranting and raving, and the kids just go, he old, he old man, they don't care. So I say a lot less. But a number of kids, I think over the past month or 2, have Googled me without me having to even ask them. And they've come to me and they've said, we didn't know, and how come you don't talk about it, and how come you don't? And I said, there's never a time or place for me to brag. about what I've done and my accomplishments, but I said, read the stuff and look it over and then give me your thoughts. Don't be shocked by what I do. I said, I draw all the time outside of school. I have exhibits all over the city outside of school. So it's flattering that some kids are now acknowledging it and going, wow. But I never had to bring it to their attention. They're just like, you know, we looked you up because we were going to get some dirt on you. And they go, wow, we didn't know all this stuff. I'm like, you're not going to get no dirt. I'm too lame for there to be dirt on me. This back here, now that I'm seeing it reflected in the mirror, this man up here, that's my grandfather, Thomas Jefferson Mason, who was also a big inspiration to me, and that's his front porch with this moonshine jug that I drew shortly after, I can't remember when, it was so a while ago, but he was a big influence on me, and he also got me into pro wrestling as a little kid and stuff like that, so it goes back to some of the other stuff you heard me talking about earlier. But in answer to your question, Dave, it can be difficult because I try to remember when I was a kid, was I ignoring what old people had to say to me? Or was I like, I don't care? And I realized I'm probably the rarity. I was the kid who didn't ignore it and who embraced it, which is probably why you see a lot of the stuff that you see. I embraced it. I never had a problem with that. For God's sake, my mom was a huge fan of this old stand-up comedian named Moms Mabley. And when my mother died, I made sure to bring attention to Moms Mabley at her funeral when I gave her eulogy. And people were like, oh yeah, Moms Mabley. They remembered. So it means something to me. History does in general. And if I wasn't an art teacher, I definitely would have become a history teacher. Definitely. Yes.
First, just thank you so much for taking time and telling us about your work. I feel like you're one of Boston's treasures, and
You'll make me start crying saying stuff like that. Don't make me tear up. Thank you.
You know, in your work, it helps us all get through the times we're in, and so I just so appreciate it. And the drawings are just so incredible themselves. And so thank you, and thank the library for putting this in a public space, which is like not a private space. It's not a private gallery or museum where people have to go see it. So that's so valuable. Let's see, I guess I have two questions. One is, it's like a lot of other people, you have a lot of people who are looking to help you get your work out in the world. A lot of ideas here today, but you know, I think about public murals and how important they are and how much history they bring, and I'm thinking, wow, wouldn't this be great on one of those big buildings, buildings in town somewhere, and maybe even moving around neighborhoods, this moving image of your work, like out there, like the things can be projected, and wow, this is really so powerful. But anyway, that's one of my ideas, throwing it in the pot with everybody else's. But about the work upstairs, like these are on scrolls, and I wonder, those are framed, and I wonder, are those done uniquely, like individually, or were they on a scroll and you cut them out?
Oh no, the ones upstairs?
Yeah.
Those are on actual copies of constitutions that they sell over in Faneuil Hall.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
And I just bought a ton of them and started gluing, pasting, drawing on top of and stuff like that. Those are from Faneuil Hall. I do more than this. I'm in a group called Urban Sketchers Boston. All right, so every Saturday or Sunday, they choose a certain part of the city, and me and a bunch of my classmates, we just go there and we just draw. It's open to the public, it's free for everybody, anybody, stuff like that. And I enjoy it very much, because number one, when I first started going, it was helping me deal with the grief of losing my mom. But no one knew me or knew anything about me. So we would go to like Copley Library and just start drawing everything in Copley Library and stuff like that. And it was good practice. So I'm a member of that group, and I go there we have one tomorrow, I think, over near Faneuil Hall, as a matter of fact. That's a place where they sell fruit and vegetables and stuff that's homegrown, and farmers and stuff bring it there. What's it called?
Haymarket.
It's next to it. There you go. That's where we're going tomorrow to draw. So I do that all the time, whenever I get a chance. Plus, you need a release. For me, I need a release sometimes because the political stuff can be overwhelming. I'm sure everyone in this room heard about the now thing that whatever's in the petri dish counts as a child and has rights.
Right.
It can be overwhelming how you deal with it. And when you go upstairs, when you see the piece that I have with the fetus holding the AR-15, you'll understand what is pro-life. What does it mean? On the one hand, you're saying women don't have the right to choose. On the other hand, you're saying someone less than 16 gets to have an AR-15 and just walk around and shoot. So what do you mean? And that's one of the pieces that's upstairs.
What is the URL for YouTube?
This is what I told you need to keep on your phone.
Or
So,
do we just do Shea Justice?
so I'll email it to you.
Okay.
So here, write this down. Write down Lee, L-E-E,
Yeah,
at stopgrinding.com, and send me an email and I'll send you the URL for this.
at Stop Grinding?
Yeah, I make a medical device that helps people stop grinding their teeth.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't have my phone up.
If you email me
Maybe I'll
at,
send it to you.
Oh, okay, thank you, Tommy.
if you email me at lee@stopgrinding.com, then I will, and ask me for the URL for the video, I'll send it to you.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you.
You need to get
Wow. Yep.
you need to get a little card with a QR code on
And
it,
put it on there.
and
Yeah.
that people can just scan with their phone while they're here, and then they'll have the URL locked in.
I will do that. It didn't even occur to me.
Didn't occur to me either.
That's a question I didn't know, and I'm actually glad, because my worst nightmare as a kid, they used to make us learn all the states and capitals and all the presidents of the United States, and they would always tell us, you better learn it, you're going to need it later in life. So if she asked me a question about the Calvin Coolidge administration, then I'd really freak out. So I'm okay with not knowing that, but
Have you presented this at the ICA? This would be perfect.
we are tentatively, me and the AMARC group that I'm a member of, African American Master Artist Residency Program
Yeah, I know
over at
that.
Northeast, we're tentatively having an exhibit at the ICA next year, 2025. This will be this is what I want to put in.
Yes,
So when we did the video conference chat with the guy who's piecing it together,
yeah.
everyone kept saying, yeah, you're going to bring the scrolls, ain't you? Everybody getting used to it. They're like, yeah, you're going to have the scroll. I'm like, of course.
Okay.
Opportunity like this, I mean, I had a really wonderful write-up when I was at Fountain Street Gallery. The Boston Globe did a really nice write-up. So I'm like, any opportunity.
Yeah, I
You know,
mean, this
any
is
opportunity.
perfect for the ICA. Perfect.
Yeah, and I love it.
Oh, housekeeping, you should mention where you'll be tonight, what you're involved in tonight.
AMARC, yep, AMARC at 4 is having an exhibition to celebrate Dana Chandler, who created the program. He was my mentor and source of inspiration. I grew up in Grove Hall, so his murals all over Roxbury, I absolutely were inspired by. As a matter of fact, I teach at Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School, and when they did a tribute mural to Roxbury, Dorchester, Roslindale, one of the walls, one of the parts, they did all these buildings, the big hotel down Dudley and some of these other places. I made sure that I repainted his Knowledge is Power, Stay in School mural on that because the city had painted over his original.
Wow.
So I was like, oh, that's gonna last forever. And I was like, wanting the custodians to make sure they hang it up so no one will take it down no time soon or anything. So it's hung. Someone would have to go out of their way to take it down.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what, Dana Chandler is a major, major influence on me.
So they still, I mean, I used to go to those AMOC things all the time.
Mhm.
So they still have them.
Oh, yes.
This may be a good opportunity to let you know how valuable AMARC is and how in danger it was for Northeastern.
Northeastern has done everything they can. We had a situation where in order for them to get that space in Jamaica Plain, for zoning laws and stuff like that, they had to have a space placed aside for black artists or local artists from the community. Because it used to be, do people remember where that big soccer field is near Mass Art that used to once be the projects over there? There used to be a small building, that's where AMARC was, and they ended up getting moved to where it is now. And in violation of the agreement, it turned into a situation of, y'all gotta leave.
Right.
But it was like, yeah, but you all in order to get this spot, you all had to do this, and this. And they were like, so what, sue us. When you're a nonprofit and you're a bunch of artists
Right.
and writers, come on now. So it's been a struggle the last several years. But our big thing, our main goal is we're going to stay active, no matter what. So tonight's exhibition is about that.
And it's at JP. It's in that.
It's at 76 Atherton Street. I actually have a flyer in my bag I can
Okay.
share with everyone.
Okay, great.
So I have 4 pieces there. I have 4 pieces there.
Wow.
Yes.
And what, you said, what time is that?
I'm sorry, say it again.
I said, you need this marketing guy.
You do?
He's wonderful.
It's tonight from
It
6 to
says-
9.
6 to 9. Did I say it wrong?
You did, you said 4 to something.
6 to 9. I'm sorry.
And it is T accessible, get off of Stony Brook.
It's a short walk.
He got me good. You see, he got me good. I
We
really
artists
thought
do
it was
not
4.
promote
6 to 9.
ourselves at all.
So they're honoring Dana Chandler.
It's, yep. It's called Resurgence. That's the theme of the show. It's on the 3rd and the 4th floor.
And there's elevators?
Yes.
Yes. From the elevator. And I hate to correct you, but Resurgence was the previous group show. This one is a reclamation.
Everybody looking at me like, man, you don't even know your own show. What's wrong with you? You both looked at me at the same time like, damn, you ain't even got that right. My mistake. Sorry about that.
Is Milton Deere still around? Do you know?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Cats?
Yeah,
Oh.
a few years ago.
Oh, 4 years?
What a lovely dude.
I
I
loved his
love
work.
talking to him.
Yeah,
And
I
it was
loved,
never a short time.
yeah, I loved his work.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Did you ever get to see him draw?
No, I didn't. No.
Amazing.
He'd sit at Piano Factory gallery openings and just, like this, then he'd make copies and hand them out.
Wow.
And Shea, since she mentioned Milton Durr, I get to share a peeper story too.
Okay.
I was doing a painting project in memory of Gloria Graves at the Piano Factory Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I was more in printmaking, so I had a whole bunch of printmaking paper.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Lee, I hate being on camera. And Milton saw it, and he said, oh, that's too good. And he went up to his studio and came back downstairs with a stack of paper.
Wow.
I said, use this.
Oh.
Boom. And I proceeded to lay them out in the gallery, and I did 50 paintings in 7 hours.
Oh my goodness.
And he came down and watched me paint. And Shea, this is where we can understand. I know the voice goes away when you're nervous, but I couldn't talk to him. I was painting, and Milt was sitting.
What's your name?
I'm Tommy.
What, no, but I mean, you obviously have paintings somewhere, right?
Oh, I have 2 upstairs in the I'm Tommy. I've been exhibiting since '87. I'm the president and founder of Artists at Large. This is the co-founder, Ann Herrick, who also has known Shea for,
Okay.
we'll just say decades.
Okay.
Got the flyer.
Oh, great.
See, I got that right. I got the flyer with all the information on it. Got the flyer.
Living in the
And
Piano
Marsha.
Let me take a
Factory, I
look.
grew up around all of the folks from the original, from the Leon Street Amar by Leon. And so it's
Take a picture of it.
family to me.
Mhm.
Oh, I can email you a JPEG if you want,
Okay.
or you can send it to yourself.
You're sharing important history in
There you go.
Boston, right?
What's your
Artist
phone number?
history
Oh,
and
617.
Building his spaces and that's important.
991.
Because even, I mean, the Piano Factory, I mean, the building is
418.
still there, but the creative energy is largely gone.
They evicted so many artists.
It's different.
No, no.
Yeah.
Small world.
They evicted so many artists
Yeah,
You know, that
and
was,
did
that
that.
whole
And they
thing
did
is
them
trash.
dirty. That was done dirty.
Oh.
yeah.
But unfortunately, once you get started with getting rid of rent control and all the other things that were supposed to protect artists, because I specifically moved to Jamaica Plain because it was like the art central, what have you. This was
Yeah.
almost 30 years ago. Now, if you have Jamaica Plain open studios, other than possibly the Elliott School or the Elliott
Yeah.
Church and all that,
Yeah.
most of the stuff is businesses that exhibit individual works.
Yeah.
You don't have them in most houses anymore like it used to be.
And a lot of people, with their intent of being in open studios is to sell, not to exhibit.
Yeah. It's just, it's lost something, and it's unfortunate that
Different from what
the
we
biggest
do.
consequences of gentrification or whatever are artists.
And I mean,
Artists, poets, writers.
and that's been the culture of Boston. That's
Yeah.
what made Boston famous. Artists, music,
Yeah.
you know, and all of those spaces
Yep.
are gone now because of, I mean, and that was the attraction. And
Which
they
begs the
gentrify,
question-
And there's nothing.
Which begs the question, when you come here and you're a student and you go to the Mass College of Art or the museum school, where do you go when you're done? Where do you go? What do you do?
If you come here as a
Open a
musician,
small
where do you
arts
play?
organization.
Huh?
You open a small arts organization.
You're gonna have to.
Well, that's the joke there. I'm a museum school grad, and that's what I did after museum school.
I found the most fun way to not make money ever.
Can you pull it off? Can a kid pull it off now, though, do
And
you
it's
think?
21 years later. still
No, I'm saying, can a
having exhibits.
kid in school who comes
Yeah, it's
out?
up to them.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
my thing is, one of that, I'm a housing rights activist in Boston, and so I feel like it's at the intersection of what you're talking about in that, and if we don't get, and it's just on affordable housing and rent control, and, you know, we're losing people, we're losing creatives, and we just gotta keep fighting.
What is that group in Boston, what are they, some cultural group that they work specifically now on, you know, places for artists to work?
artists stay here.
Well, that's, yeah, but I'm talking about a state group. You know.
Oh, the BRA?
No.
Mass Cultural Center or something.
Well, I forgot, there was a couple of women that were interviewed, and I know in the town where I live, I'm starting, well, I'm working on a group, well, creating this thing where I'm finding places for artists to exhibit in my town, because my town is recognized art, it's just football, you know? So, but at any rate,
Oh, God.
I was interested in, because what they're doing is they work with different, working with Boston and some other, you know, cities to make sure that the town laws accommodate, you know, or write into their plans, their 5-year plans, whatever, that the arts are accommodated and that the, you know, the buildings or something. I'm not explaining it well, just, you know,
Yeah.
but, you know, that they're geared to, they understand that artists need these spaces, and it's written into it so that you cannot summarily kick somebody out, basically.
Man, that is
Because you know what
so
happens is
important.
artists go take over
That
a
is
building and
so
they make it really
important.
wonderful, and then the owner sells it out from under them.
That is so important. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
so,
Somerville's going through that.
Yeah.
Somerville is going through that right now with the Amory, because the town did buy the building to keep it an art and cultural center,
Yeah.
but there's too many regulations, and they're pricing the people that need to use it out of using it.
Yeah, that's what happens, the rents go, I can't afford a studio in my town.
Well,
They're just
historically,
expensive.
creative people have always sort of seeped into the places that nobody else wanted to be,
Right, sure.
made them into a place that you wanted to be, and then
Then lost it.
got.
That was essentially the piano factory.
Right,
Yeah,
When they got in
exactly.
there, it was essentially the piano factory. Because I remember that back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, before, I mean, when I first moved in there, because I moved in a year after it opened, if you took a cab home, the quickest way to explain to them where you were going was to say you were going to Boston Clutch. Because Boston Clutch used to repair cars there.
That's
Wow. You know, so, I mean, now it's like, oh, well, you know, all these cool parties and, you know, they have concierge service and a swimming pool. I had a nightmare about that, and then they did it.
With all these attorneys in town, there should be, a legal group that supports the artists.
Well, there's volunteer lawyers for
There's
the
volunteer
arts.
lawyer for the arts, but it's on a case-to-case basis.
Yeah.
And some of it,
Amar
like your
struggles with
little, your nugget for the day, and I know this from having applied for studios and housing and all that, is that the city, in order to be a certified artist, to be eligible for any of the art spaces, 50% of your income has to come from art. Shay, you get 50% of your money from art?
He just want me to laugh on tape. You trying to make me laugh on tape. Put this in the bloopers reel. That's not gonna happen.
That's absurd.
Yeah, couple that with affordable housing, the median income guideline, I forget the exact number, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood, the median income is $65,000.
It's
What's
based
the
on-
average school teacher make?
Again, you want me to laugh on tape.
Yeah.
I don't even want to get into that. Yeah.
And I say this from the point of view of, I'm a walking living artist that's been exhibiting since '87. Never has 50% of my income come from art.
No.
5%.
Never of mine. No. No.
And I know all too well, and Ann does too, is that places for art, to show a little history for the day, is the original Artist at Large studio is 1 block from here. We had 4,000 square feet, and I had shows from Cuba, Colombia, Haiti, the Dominican, 2-year-olds, 82-year-olds, and the landlord.
An opening and closing every month. We had musical performances going on 2-3 nights a week. We had a great time. And
And when the roof started to leak, the landlord decided to kick us out and not fix us. And that's the core of what happens
yeah,
with art spaces in general.
and then we moved a block from here in the other direction and got to see firsthand what happens when a church goes out of business.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank
So
you.
yeah, it's you know, and as yeah,
So Northeastern has totally put us through it.
oh,
They have put us through it
twice.
so many times that
And the thing that
it's just sad.
amazed me the 2 times I've watched Amar have to move was it wasn't just that they came in and said, you're irrelevant, you have to move. They tried to make it your fault.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, it was because you had done something to the building. The only thing you guys had done to the building was bring people to it.
Yeah.
And also prove
Well, when you go to if you come to the show on Atherton Street tonight
Yeah.
at 6 o'clock,
sorry.
no, I'll make sure I get it right. Tonight at 6, if folks come to it. You look around outside the hallways and some of the other parts of the building. We have back orders. Please fix this. Can you please make a change to this? Can you, with these things? We'll get to it when we get to it. They have been so rough towards the artists in the group, and it's. I think the reason why they haven't straight out done what they want to do to us is because they're trying to make inroads towards Roxbury and some other places in terms of buying properties, and they don't want to be seen as the gentrifying monster, racist monster that they are.
Which they are.
Yeah.
They
Well,
don't want to be seen that way, which is why they haven't pulled the trigger
area
on us.
around the piano factory.
Yeah,
It's all been bought up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so much of it, I mean, blocks in every direction, and then the developments, and then putting police headquarters down there.
And then
It's subtle, huh?
how many do we
Behind
need?
South End
How
South.
many massive crimes? There's the one that's right near Madison Park High School, that massive police station right there. Then you got one right down Nubian Square, Dudley Square right there.
Yeah.
It's like, where are all these big crimes happening between those 2 spots?
Yeah, yeah.
Between Ruggles and there. It's insanity. But it's also, you know, it's the sad part about it, and obviously we don't want to pontificate too deeply into this, but the sad part for me about this whole thing is how gentrification, construction, property being built and people being evicted, how little regard for the creative process and for the artists, and I'm not just saying the artists, the poets, the writers,
Like the musician.
the musicians, how little regard it is for that. Then when we do find a little space someplace, something rich or some corporation or some rich people say, oh, I want to get in on that, but you know what? I want a Starbucks over here and we're going to raise the rent, y'all got to go. And then before you know it, we're gone. It is such a vicious cycle.
And the growing up in the South End, there's sort of this rich ethnic stew. You can go a
Yeah.
couple of blocks and hear one language, you know, one way and hear Arabic, and 2 blocks the other way and hear Spanish, but go down to Shaman Ave and it's Chinese.
Mhm.
You know, and you know the how wonderful that is. You know, and that along, you know, again has, I mean, you go to the South End now and that's pretty much gone.
Yeah.
Except for a few stores hanging in.
Well, they tore down the South End settlements, I mean,
Yep.
come on.
Oh, the Harriet Tubman house had me
They-
crying, and they
yeah.
smashed that quick.
Yeah, boom.
That was a giant hole one day when I drove by there, and I was like, weren't there protests?
And
What?
now it's
What?
this thing, we went by it recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Housing.
Oh, I may sound old saying this, but I remember at the Piano Factory, there used to be a gallery downstairs, because I was in group shows downstairs, not that gallery that's there now when you first show up,
I think
but there
it
was
is an
one
architect
downstairs
office
where the
way.
residencies were, and that's gone. They got rid of that.
It was a great space because you had some ceilings that were low and intimate, you had glass coming in, you could see over the top, and then you had this 40-foot wall on one side that you could put this gigantic stuff on.
Yeah.
You know, and you didn't even have to go to it, you could walk down the hall and you could see the work.
Yeah.
Now you have to, and it is the other place, it's just an office space
Yeah.
that they're using as a gallery until they manage to fail.
Man, it just evicted so many, or I think Paul Goodnight's one of the only ones left there, artist-wise.
He has a
There's a
tiny
huge-
space.
Unfortunately, he's
Yeah.
sort of there, but more because they want to use that as a PR.
You can tell.
But your feel-good story for the day is that the gallery he's talking about, the Piano Craft Guild, me back in '94, invited me to exhibit. And I said, I got no money. They're like, no, the gallery's yours. And I had 1,500 square feet to mount my first solo exhibit as a Boston artist.
2 weeks before the show, you got adored.
That's another feel-good story. But the thing is that shouldn't be a rarity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, that artists should be saying, you know, hey, what are you working on? Mary Paz, this is the artist that exhibited before you
Okay.
last year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And she's also was a neighbor out in Norwood where we had art space that we got kicked out of an entire building.
Yeah, I was in the same building, yeah.
And then when we went
Careful, careful.
when we went shopping for art space, we were shown studios. Hopefully people understand square footage. I was literally shown a 280 square foot cubicle to use for my art creation. And the realtor had no problem telling me that it was $900 a month.
And the walls didn't even go to the ceiling.
No, they
Well, but
didn't.
it's also that it shows the lack of foresight, because
Or
how is
even
Shea gonna work
understand.
on a scroll in 280 square feet? How am I gonna paint? If anybody needs to see the scale of my paintings, there are two up in the library room. They're 20, 2
Yeah, we're gonna go up there after this, obviously,
right.
check out the work.
But,
In housekeeping, Shea will show you around his new body of work, but also we are having an official artist reception for him in March on the 23rd, where he will be bringing in a couple of pieces for a pop-up show, right?
Yes.
And maybe the scroll?
Part of it. I'm not sure of the whole thing. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Part of it's fine.
Yeah.
Yes, that's March 23rd from noon to 2.
Do you give this talk to other places? I mean, if I got my line.
You can hire them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you talk with you about your fees. and
I'll
all
talk.
that.
Yeah, anytime. I don't think I've ever said no. I think I've missed one by mistake, and that was the Piano Factory's tribute to James Baldwin's 100th birthday.
Oh,
that was
I
really
missed
good.
the deadline. Well, I had a show in Hopkinton,
Yeah.
and I forgot about the deadline of when to submit, and I was like, oh my God, it's his 100th birthday, and I went to the reception, because I'm
It
going to
was
respect
really
a fellow
good.
artist. Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure what they were going to do with that, but I really liked the range of work that they had in the exhibit. I mean, it's really good, just all over the place,
Yes.
but always connecting back. Yeah.
Some of that work is on display in this show tonight.
Oh, good.
Yeah, some of the Baldwin work, I think Hakeem Raquib, a few of his pieces that were in it are going to be at the show tonight. But generally, I never say no. If someone says, oh, I'd love you to do this, would you be willing? I'm like, oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm in an exhibit right now as a tribute to the Civil War collection of materials out in Attleboro, Center for the Art, Museum of Arts and stuff. So I have a couple of pieces that are out there. We just had a reception a couple of weeks ago. I didn't have any people come out there. Well, I guess I did. Lee and some of my friends came, but I'm like, it's a hike to get to Attleboro from Boston. I was like, yeah, you're not going to get a large turnout of friends. So it's good that I was in a group show and there was a lot of people, but I'm like, Attleboro is a hike.
Is it
Yes.
still up?
Yes, it should come down next week, at the end of next week at some point.
This would be great. This
Oh,
would
you get smile.
Let me see it. No, I'm saying, this would be, I'm a graduate of Brandeis. This would be great, perfect for the Rose Museum.
By all means, let me know. I'd be glad to.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be glad to.
I
Yeah, I went to
know.
the Rose Museum when I was in
Yeah.
college.
Yeah. That would be great.
And one of my classmates is a benefactor, so I could call her.
I'll give you my contact information.
Yeah, the three of us could go up there, because this is incredible.
Well, thanks for the ego boost. I just look at it and I go, man, that was a lot of writing. My hand hurts, and I'm left-handed. It's hard. Yes.
Hey, what's wrong with left-handed?
When I have to do this a lot, it just hurts. Yes.
Calligrapher, left-handed.
Okay.
Question, you mentioned earlier that you couldn't use watercolor on the scroll because of the...
Really, really light washes of it. Extremely light
So what
washes.
are the media that you're using?
Pen and ink, colored pencils, magic markers, Copic markers, like what you're seeing here, markers, pen and ink, blue pencil. And a lot of it is depending on the mood that suits me. If you see these cards that are floating around through parts of it, it was because I created a deck of race cards. Everyone gets mad and says, you playing the race card. So I drew a whole bunch of them that flow through there in different areas of what exactly are race cards. And so that's what those are. But I'm open to whatever medium. I just know like pure heavy watercolor would just cut right through the paper. And certain parts tear, certain parts have ripped, so I've had to tape the back of it on certain areas just because it's wear and tear. The paper's pretty old at this point.
So could you show the scroll physically, like, ancient Egyptian scrolls, things would roll up?
Can-
Where you could actually have that sort of
Can I speak to that?
unrolling, and then you could watch, you could see it in person as opposed to... I
It's-
mean, you get the same effect you have here. It
There's-
would be the real.
There's a reason not to, and that's that it damages it. When we did the photographs of the sections to put, this isn't an actual video, it's synthesized out of photographs. And when we did the photographs, I had a vacuum table on the floor because the scroll's edges curl up from him working on it, and they tear. And so the vacuum table would pull it perfectly flat, and then we'd take a photograph, and then I had a computer program that equalized the light, because the light's never perfectly even, and when you're going to be moving, panning across, any unevenness pulses. Anyway, so at his thesis, what do you call it, exhibition?
Yeah.
The scroll was physically there in a glass cabinet, but you would damage it if you kept rolling it back and forth.
Yeah.
So, it's something to say, wow, there it is, I can see it, but it's not practical to go through something that's 3,000 feet long. So many rotations and so much wear and tear on the thing. So to break it into sections and do this to it and then be able to scroll on a video would be a lot less physically damaging to the art. When you think about the pains they go to protect art in museums against light and all kinds of other things that could damage it, the amount of damage from physically rolling this thing back and forth is thousands of times that high. So from my own love of the fact that the original exists, I would never want to see it exhibited that way because it would get destroyed really fast.
When I was in graduate school for the thesis show, the curator, who was really a nasty person, he got on my nerves like it was no one's business, just was like, he didn't want it in a display case, all right? Because I was going to put it in a display case, but this video that me and Lee worked on was going to be on a big screen during the exhibition. He was like, that's dumb, that's not practical. Create something so people can just crank the scroll. So my first thought is, you're going to rip, it's going to get ripped, because people may go backwards, forwards, backwards, forward, it's going to rip. And he said, well, you need to figure that out, you're the artist.
Oh, no.
All right, like I said, this curator was a real jerk, but I was like, oh no, I don't got to figure anything out. I'm about to graduate. It's going in a display case. Me and Lee worked on the video. And the guy was really angry at me about it, because he was kind of bullying people because it was his gallery, in a sense. But I was like, oh no, I'm not going to risk ripping this. It's already tears just from the wear and tear of me unspooling it, going back and forth when I've had to do that. And I'm like, I'm not gonna risk ripping it. Like I said, if I start cutting it or dividing it or doing that kind of stuff, it's gonna ruin my train of thought. And I'm not gonna let that happen.
Can you see the Dead Sea Scrolls on a little?
Like what I wouldn't mind doing is making a giant copy in color of it in its entirety, and then you can take it home and do what you want with it, but that's gonna run a few $100s to
More than that, yeah.
be like, oh wow, look what I got, you know.
I know that some of the people that are researching the Dead Sea Scrolls are having some good luck developing scanning software where they can scan the roll,
Yeah.
and they can now, they're beginning to be able to isolate each layer and knit them together from that, so
Yes.
the day may come when you can just do that.
One of the things that, I'm just going to say this as an idea because I want to promote Shea doing this. I think this is an amazing educational tool. Like, students can look at this and be visually fascinated by it and drawn into history and learn about things they would otherwise never learn about.
Exactly.
And I would love to see a public space like this have Shea come in for like a series of evenings where he would give like talks on sections of it and speak in detail to each piece. And then we could take that and link it with the scroll and have a series of lessons
Oh, that'd be
on
perfect.
like what all this came from. You know, like the whole idea on the web where you can have a hyperlink.
Yeah.
Well, what if I was scrolling through this and I clicked on a certain part of it and boom, up comes Shea talking about that thing.
That's a
To me, that would be the most amazing educational tool. But I think if it's going to come about, it's got to be some kind of a community effort where some space invites Shea in to do this and there are actually students there to ask questions, because that's where he really shines, is talking about it. When you bring this thing up on YouTube, it's got a soundtrack.
Yeah,
When-
we just turned the sound off, but I narrated.
When we finished it,
Yeah,
when we
you-
finished
I
the
narrated
video,
everything.
I said to Shea, okay, we've got the video, but do you want to have a soundtrack? And he said, sure, just run it in front of me and I'll talk. And I said, seriously, it's an hour long. We sat a laptop computer in my then apartment, which has since burned up in a fire. We set a laptop computer and a microphone in front of him. And for 1 hour straight, without ever stopping, he commented on this thing as it rolled by.
Wow, that's great.
And that was really cool, but I get into that and I think, there's an hour worth of stuff just in that little piece. I'd love to be able to hear that, so.
Have you applied for a grant to the NEA or anything like that? I mean, to me, that seems like that would be a really worthwhile
There,
grant.
when I've
That's a
looked,
great idea.
I've
love
been
that
pushed for a couple of things. I tried NEA, but I don't know what the grant would be for this,
Well, I'm producing a video.
of something like that.
of-
Yeah.
Like making it into a whole set of teaching
Yeah,
materials.
like the Khan Academy, but the Shea Academy.
That is great.
The one thing I have tried to do, and this is me being a kind of a jerk, was find a way to get into the MacArthur Genius Grant.
Perfect.
But I can't do it. Yeah, I have to be nominated.
Yeah, somebody who's
Someone
in
has to
that
nominate me.
organization has to say.
So one of the professors who does the research on race at Boston University, I'm constantly inviting him to shows and stuff. And like, I'd love to have a conversation,
Yeah, right.
because the Genius Grant thing is
Oh, yeah.
tax-free, whatever, X amount of dollars. But it's hard for me, and I don't want to say it to sound like I'm being lazy or anything like that, but it's hard for me to do it because I get so obsessed with the writing and the art and
Sure.
the stuff and getting
You
that
need to-
going,
you need to get a volunteer
especially
grant writer.
now that we're heading towards 2024 election. I'm sorry, say it again.
I said, I've written grants, so I can do some.
She
So
said,
then we
you
need-
need a
then we need to
volunteer as
talk.
who's a
Yeah, we
grant
need to
writer.
talk. Yeah, we need
I'm
to
an
talk.
artist, I've had to have jobs too, so
Some of the,
I've learned a lot.
on the scroll, some of the pieces would seem like they would lend themselves to a piece, a standalone piece. Have you ever thought of taking, sections of it and creating it like a poster or something that when you did events like this, you could sell?
Yeah. Well, I have small ones of this.
So you,
that I sell for $20. I have really small ones of this whole thing. It's not in color, it's this small. And the guys at Kinko's, whenever I show up to run off copies from something Lee had helped me, or Lee had created for me in terms of doing that, as soon as they see me, they're like, oh God, it's Shea Justice and the scroll thing. Who's gonna cut them now? You know, because it's 20 feet worth and stuff like that.
but I think some of them would be standalone pieces if you, if somebody wanted something, a piece like this, that was the size of a, I don't want to say a poster, but a small thing that somebody might want to purchase.
Get her, she has a big screen TV in her living room. When I had her click on this, and she was watching it, and she had her friends with her, and she was like, what am I watching? And I described it to her. She was like, you did all this? And I said, and the autographs were the ones you told me to do. And she was like, wow. And then when she saw the part where I mentioned her in the video and stuff like that, she was like, my baby made me famous. So that's why, you know, I wanted to pause it there for a second and acknowledge it and stuff. So this is the part, Lee Weinstein, and then you'll see at the very end part of the process that we went through.
Oh, you're in the way, sorry.
I'll get up.
So you can see the two ends of
best
the
part,
scroll
like,
on the
anyway.
floor there.
Oh, yeah.
And we move it a little.
Oh, wow, look at that.
That's great.
Like I said, it's about 25 pounds.
Whoa.
A lot of paper. So but when you took that out to dry
So,
on it, you have.
and then I switch the switch on the vacuum table.
Vacuum sucks it down to hold it in place.
And we take a photo.
And he has lasers on both ends to make sure it all lines up.
And the fun comes when you knit them all together.
Yeah.
That must be a
Editing,
process, yeah.
That